I should have known something was wrong when Lauren started hiding her phone like it contained nuclear launch codes. My name is Eric Hayes, and I'm a structural engineer who specializes in making sure buildings don't fall down. It's a job that requires attention to detail, pattern recognition, and the ability to spot structural weaknesses before they become catastrophic failures. Turns out those skills are pretty useful for spotting when your marriage is about to collapse, too. Lauren Hayes, my wife of 7 years, had been acting strange for months. At first, I chalked it up to work stress. She's an HR director at a mid-sized marketing firm, and those corporate types are always dealing with some drama or another. But this was different. This was personal. It started with the phone thing. Lauren used to leave her phone everywhere: kitchen counter, coffee table, charging station by the bed. She'd ask me to check her messages while she was driving, or hand it over without a second thought. Then suddenly that phone became surgically attached to her hand. She took it to the bathroom, kept it face down during dinner, and actually flinched when I picked it up to move it off the couch. "Just be careful with that," she'd say, snatching it back like I was about to drop it in a blender. Then came the late-night work calls. Lauren's job occasionally required after-hours communication, but these calls were different. She'd step outside onto our back patio, speaking in hushed tones and laughing at things that apparently weren't funny enough to share with her husband. When I'd ask about them later, she'd give vague answers about client issues and team coordination. The gym obsession was another red flag. Lauren had always been health conscious, but suddenly she was spending 2 hours at the gym every day after work. She bought new workout clothes, started wearing makeup to exercise, and came home looking like she'd spent more time socializing than sweating. When I suggested we work out together like we used to, she said she preferred her alone time at the gym. But the real kicker was the way she smiled at her phone. You know that look, the secret smile, the one that says someone just made your day with a private joke or a flirty comment. I'd catch her grinning at her screen like a teenager with her first crush, and when she'd notice me watching, she'd quickly close whatever app she was using. "Just something funny Tasha shared," she'd say, referring to her best friend. But I knew Tasha's sense of humor, and it usually involved complaining about her husband or sharing memes about wine. This smile was different. This smile had heat behind it. Lauren's birthday was coming up in early June, and despite all the weird behavior, I wanted to do something special. We'd been together since college, married for 7 years, and I still remembered what made her happy. At least, I thought I did. She'd been dropping hints about a vintage necklace she'd seen at an antique shop downtown. It was expensive, more than I'd normally spend on jewelry, but she'd mentioned it 3 times, which in Lauren speak meant she really wanted it. So I went back to the shop, bought the damn thing, and planned to give it to her at the birthday party she'd been planning for weeks. The party was Lauren's idea. She wanted to invite friends from work, college buddies, neighbors, basically everyone we knew. She spent weeks planning the menu, decorating our backyard, and sending out invitations. She was more excited about this party than she'd been about anything in months, which should have made me happy. Instead, it made me nervous. "It's going to be perfect," she kept saying, checking items off her endless to-do list. "Everyone's going to be there." Everyone. I wondered who exactly she meant by that. The day of the party, I spent the morning helping her set up. We strung lights across the patio, arranged tables and chairs, and set up a bar station near the back door. Lauren was in full hostess mode, buzzing around with nervous energy and checking her phone every 5 minutes. "Expecting someone special?" I asked, only half joking. She looked up from her phone with that deer-in-headlights expression she'd been perfecting lately. "Just making sure everyone knows when to arrive. You know how people are with timing." I knew how people were with timing. I also knew that most party coordination didn't require the kind of secretive texting Lauren had been doing all morning. Guests started arriving around 6. Our backyard filled up with familiar faces: Lauren's co-workers, our neighbors Tom and Jennifer from next door, a few college friends we still kept in touch with, and Tasha with her husband Mark. Everyone seemed happy to be there, drinks were flowing, and Lauren was in her element as the center of attention. I waited until about an hour into the party to give her the necklace. She was standing near the patio table, laughing at something one of her co-workers had said, when I approached with the small wrapped box. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," I said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Lauren's face lit up with genuine surprise and delight as she unwrapped the box. When she saw the vintage necklace inside, she actually gasped. "Eric, this is beautiful! This is the one from the antique shop, isn't it?" She held it up, and several people gathered around to admire it. "You mentioned it a few times," I said, feeling proud of myself for paying attention. "I thought you should have it." She stood on her tiptoes to kiss my cheek, and for a moment, everything felt normal. This was the Lauren I'd fallen in love with, the one who got excited about thoughtful gifts and wasn't afraid to show affection in front of other people. "I love it," she said, fastening the necklace around her neck. "Help me with the clasp?" I moved behind her to secure the necklace, and that's when I noticed she was looking toward the back gate. A man was standing there, clearly just arrived, holding a bottle of wine and scanning the crowd. He was tall, well-dressed in that casual, expensive way that screamed real estate agent or sales manager, with the kind of confident smile that suggested he was used to getting what he wanted. Lauren's entire body language changed when she saw him. Her shoulders straightened, her smile shifted from grateful to something else entirely, and I felt her pulse quicken under my fingers as I worked with the necklace clasp. "There," I said, stepping back. "Perfect." But Lauren wasn't looking at me anymore. She was looking at the man by the gate who had spotted her and was making his way through the crowd. As he got closer, I could see he was probably in his mid-30s, with a kind of gym-sculpted physique that suggested he had plenty of time for self-care. His eyes were locked on Lauren like she was the only person at the party. That's when Lauren leaned close to me, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow managed to sound both sweet and devastating. "Don't get jealous, okay? You should leave for a bit. My ex showed up. I don't want drama." I stared at her, certain I'd misheard. The party noise seemed to fade into background static as her words sank in. Leave? She wanted me to leave my own wife's birthday party, right after I'd given her a thoughtful, expensive gift that she'd specifically wanted? "What did you just say?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Lauren's smile never wavered, but her eyes were already moving past me toward her ex. "Chris is here. I didn't know he was coming, and I don't want things to get awkward. Just give us some space to catch up, okay? You understand?" It wasn't a question. It was a polite command, delivered with the kind of casual confidence that suggested she expected me to comply without argument. Like I was the one being unreasonable for existing at my own wife's birthday party. I looked around at our guests, our friends, our neighbors, people who knew us as a couple, and felt my face burn with humiliation. Several people were close enough to have overheard, and I could see the confused looks, the uncomfortable glances. Tom, from next door, was staring at us with obvious concern. "You want me to leave?" I said, still processing the audacity of the request. "Just for a little while," Lauren said, her voice taking on that patient tone she used when she thought I was being difficult. "It's not a big deal, Eric. Don't make it weird. Don't make it weird. Right. Because asking your husband to abandon your birthday party so you can hang out with your ex isn't weird at all." I nodded once, not trusting myself to speak. The smart play was to avoid a scene in front of everyone we knew. The smart play was to be the mature, understanding husband who didn't get jealous or possessive. The smart play was to walk away with whatever dignity I had left. So that's what I did. I walked through our house, past the kitchen where Tasha was refilling her wine glass, past the living room where a few guests had migrated inside, and out the front door. I stood on our front porch for a moment, listening to the sounds of the party continuing without me in the backyard. Laughter, conversation, the clink of glasses. Life moving on as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. Something that changed everything, even if I was the only one who understood it yet. I walked around to the side of our house where I could see the backyard through the kitchen window and the open patio door. I told myself I was just getting some air, that I'd go back inside in a few minutes once Lauren and her ex had their little reunion. That's when I saw them. Lauren and Chris, I assumed that was his name, were standing in the far corner of our patio, near the garden shed where the party lights cast long shadows. They weren't just talking. They were standing close, the way people stand when they're sharing secrets or creating intimacy in a crowded space. I watched through the kitchen window as Chris leaned down to say something in Lauren's ear. She laughed, throwing her head back in that full-throated way she used to laugh at my jokes. Her hand went to his arm, fingers lingering on his bicep like she was testing the firmness of his workout routine. My stomach clenched, but I kept watching. Maybe I was misreading the situation. Maybe they were just old friends catching up, and I was letting my imagination run wild because of all the weird behavior lately. Maybe... Chris cupped Lauren's face in his hands and kissed her. Not a friendly peck on the cheek, not a quick hello kiss between old friends. A real kiss, slow and deliberate and familiar, like they'd done it 1,000 times before. Lauren's arms went around his neck, pulling him closer, and for a moment they were completely absorbed in each other. At my wife's birthday party, in our backyard, while I stood 20 feet away, watching through our kitchen window like a voyeur in my own life. The world tilted sideways. Everything I'd been noticing for months suddenly snapped into focus with horrible clarity. The secretive phone calls, the gym obsession, the hidden text messages, the way she'd been emotionally distant even when we were in the same room. This wasn't new. This had been going on for a while, and she'd asked me to leave so she could do this without the inconvenience of her husband witnessing it. I don't remember walking back into the house. I don't remember crossing the kitchen or stepping onto the patio. But suddenly, I was there, standing a few feet away from them, and several party guests were turning to look at me with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright alarm. The music seemed to fade as I crossed the patio. Lauren saw me first. Her eyes widened, and her secret smile froze into something like panic. Chris was slower to react, probably because he was still processing the fact that he'd just kissed a married woman at her own birthday party. I looked straight at him, my voice carrying clearly across the suddenly quiet patio. "You should know," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "She's my wife. We're still married." Chris's face drained of color. He stared at Lauren like she'd just revealed she was an alien. "Wait, what?" he muttered, stepping back from her like she'd become radioactive. "She told me you two were done. She said you were out of the picture." Out of the picture. I felt a bitter laugh building in my chest. Is that what Lauren had told him? That we were separated, divorced, that I was just some inconvenient ex-husband who occasionally showed up to make things awkward? Lauren started talking fast, her hands moving in that frantic way they did when she was trying to manage a crisis at work. "Chris, I can explain. It's complicated. We're having problems, and I thought—" "You thought what?" Chris interrupted, his voice getting louder. "You thought you'd lie to me about being married? You thought I'd be okay with being your side piece while your husband throws you birthday parties?" The patio had gone completely quiet now. Our guests were standing frozen with drinks in their hands, watching our marriage implode in real time. I could see Tom and Jennifer by the bar station, looking like they wanted to disappear. Tasha was standing near the back door with her mouth open, clearly knowing more about this situation than she'd ever let on. "I didn't lie," Lauren said, but her voice lacked conviction. "We've been having problems for months. I told you things were complicated." "Complicated?" Chris shook his head, angry and embarrassed. "Complicated is having trust issues or different life goals. Complicated isn't being married to someone else while you're telling me you want to be with me." So that's what she'd told him, that she wanted to be with him. Not just that they were old friends catching up. Not just that she was going through a rough patch in her marriage. She'd told him she wanted to be with him. I looked at Lauren, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. The woman I'd been married to for 7 years, the woman I'd just given an expensive necklace to celebrate another year of her life, had been living a double life for months. She'd been planning a future with someone else while going through the motions of being my wife. "How long?" I asked quietly. Lauren's eyes filled with tears, but I couldn't tell if they were genuine or strategic. "Eric, please, not here, not like this." "How long?" I repeated, my voice carrying across the silent patio. Chris answered for her. 3 months, he said, looking at me with something that might have been respect or pity. "She contacted me 3 months ago, said she'd been thinking about me, that she wasn't happy, that she wanted to see if we still had something." 3 months. 3 months of secret phone calls and gym sessions and late-night texts. 3 months of planning this party, accepting my gift, sleeping in our bed, and pretending to be my wife while building a relationship with someone else. "So you used me too," Chris said to Lauren, his voice bitter. "I didn't sign up for this. I thought you were available. I thought you were choosing me because you wanted to be with me, not because you wanted to cheat on your husband." Lauren was crying now, real tears that streaked her carefully applied makeup. "It's not like that. I do want to be with you. I was going to tell Eric. I was waiting for the right time." The right time. I almost laughed. When exactly would that have been? After the party? After she'd gotten her birthday presents and her celebration? After she'd figured out how to transition from one relationship to another without any inconvenient gaps in attention and support? I didn't argue. I didn't beg for an explanation or demand to know why I wasn't enough anymore. I didn't make a scene or throw punches or do any of the dramatic things that might have made for better gossip later. Instead, I nodded once, my voice steady and clear. "It doesn't matter now," I said. "I'm filing for divorce. You can both stop pretending." Lauren reached for me, her voice breaking. "Eric, please. We can talk about this. We can work it out. I made a mistake, but we can fix this." I stepped away from her outstretched hand. Because in one night, she'd proven she could betray 2 people at the same time and call it love. She'd proven that our 7-year marriage meant less to her than a 3-month affair with someone who thought she was single. But most importantly, she'd proven that she thought I was stupid enough to accept this. "Enjoy the party," I said to the crowd of frozen guests. "I'm going for a drive." I walked back through our house, grabbed my keys from the kitchen counter, and headed for my truck. Behind me, I could hear voices starting up again, urgent whispers, confused questions, the sound of a party dying an awkward death. I sat in my truck for a moment, engine running, and pulled out my phone. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I needed. Paul Reeves answered on the second ring. "Eric, what's up, man?" Paul was my best friend from college and the best man at my wedding. He was also a former police detective who'd started his own private investigation business after retiring early. If anyone could help me figure out exactly what I was dealing with, it was Paul. "I need your help," I said, watching through my rearview mirror as guests started leaving our house in small groups. "My wife is having an affair, and I need to know everything." "Jesus, Eric, are you sure?" I just watched her kiss the guy at her own birthday party after she asked me to leave so I wouldn't make things awkward. There was a long pause. "I'll be right over," Paul said. "Don't do anything stupid until I get there." Too late for that, I thought. I'd already done something stupid. I'd trusted my wife. Paul arrived at my house 40 minutes later, just as the last of the party guests were leaving. I watched from my truck as Lauren stood in our doorway, still wearing the necklace I'd given her, saying goodbye to people with a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. She looked like someone who'd just survived a natural disaster and was trying to pretend everything was fine. Tasha was the last to leave, and I could see her and Lauren having an intense conversation on the front porch. Lots of hand gestures and head shaking from Tasha, lots of crying and pleading from Lauren. Finally, Tasha shook her head one last time and walked to her car without looking back. Even Lauren's best friend was done with her. Paul pulled up behind my truck and got out, looking every inch the ex-cop he was. At 39, he was built like someone who'd spent 20 years staying in shape for a job that might require chasing people through back alleys. His hair was starting to go gray at the temples, but his eyes were still sharp and observant. "Hell of a party," he said, nodding toward the house where Lauren was now standing alone on the porch. "It had its moments," I replied. Paul studied my face in the streetlight. "You holding up okay?" "I'm pissed off," I said honestly, "but I'm thinking clearly. That's why I called you." "Good. Anger is useful if you channel it right. Revenge fantasies will just get you in trouble." He leaned against his car. "Tell me everything." So I did. I told him about the months of strange behavior, the secretive phone calls, the gym obsession, the way Lauren had been emotionally distant even when we were in the same room. I told him about tonight, the birthday gift, the request to leave my own wife's party, watching through the window as she kissed another man. "His name is Chris," I said. "According to him, this has been going on for 3 months. According to him, Lauren told him we were done, that she was available." Paul nodded, taking mental notes the way cops do. "What's his last name?" "I don't know yet, but he looks like money. Expensive clothes, gym membership, probably drives something flashy. Lauren called him her ex, so they have history. High school? College? Not sure, but the way they were together, this isn't just physical. They're comfortable with each other, familiar." Paul was quiet for a moment, watching as Lauren finally went back inside and closed the front door. "What do you want from this, Eric? What's your end goal?" It was a good question. What did I want? I wanted to understand how my marriage had fallen apart without me noticing. I wanted to know if Lauren had been planning to leave me, or if she'd intended to keep both relationships going indefinitely. I wanted to know if our entire marriage had been a lie, or just the last few months. But mostly, I wanted to make sure she didn't get to control the narrative. I wanted to make sure that when this was over, everyone knew exactly who Lauren Hayes really was. "I want the truth," I said. "All of it. And I want to make sure she doesn't screw me over in the divorce." Paul nodded approvingly. "Smart. The truth protects you legally and it protects you socially. People are going to take sides in this, and you want them to have accurate information when they do." "How do we get it?" "Carefully and legally," Paul said. "I'm not going to help you do anything that could get you arrested or hurt your position in divorce proceedings. But there are plenty of legal ways to gather information about what your wife has been up to." Over the next hour, sitting in Paul's car in a 24-hour diner parking lot, he laid out a plan. Phone records, which I could access since we shared a family plan. Credit card statements, which I had every right to review since my name was on the accounts. Social media activity, which was public information. Employment records, which might show unusual patterns in Lauren's work schedule. "The key is documentation," Paul explained. "You want dates, times, locations, communications. You want to build a timeline that shows exactly when this affair started and how extensive it's been." "What about following them?" "That's where it gets tricky. You can't stalk your wife, and you can't harass the other guy. But if they're meeting in public places, and you happen to be there with a camera, that's just unfortunate timing for them." Paul had contacts at the phone company, the credit card companies, and various other places that might have information about Lauren's activities. He also had surveillance equipment and the kind of investigative skills that came from 20 years of police work. "This is going to take time," he warned, "and it's going to hurt. You're going to learn things about your wife that you probably don't want to know." "I already learned that she's been lying to me for 3 months and thinks I'm stupid enough to leave my own house so she can make out with her boyfriend," I said. "How much worse can it get?" Paul gave me a look that suggested I really didn't want to know the answer to that question. We agreed to meet the next morning to start going through records. Paul would handle the technical aspects of the investigation, and I would focus on observing Lauren's behavior and documenting anything unusual. "One more thing," Paul said, as we prepared to leave the diner. "Don't confront her about any of this until we know everything. Don't let on that you're investigating. Act normal, act hurt, act like you're trying to process what happened tonight. Let her think she's controlling the situation." "You want me to pretend everything's fine?" "I want you to pretend you're a devastated husband who's hoping his marriage can be saved," Paul said. "I want her to feel safe enough to keep making mistakes." I drove home just after midnight, dreading the conversation that was waiting for me. Lauren's car was in the driveway, and I could see lights on in our bedroom. The backyard was dark now, the party lights turned off, the evidence of our destroyed marriage cleaned up and put away. I found Lauren in our bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed in her pajamas. She'd taken off the necklace I'd given her, and it was sitting on the nightstand like an accusation. Her eyes were red from crying, and she looked small and vulnerable in a way that might have moved me a few hours earlier. "Eric," she said as soon as I walked in. "I'm so sorry. I know how that looked, but it's not what you think." I sat down in the chair by our window, keeping some distance between us. "What is it then?" "Chris and we have history. We dated in high school, and we've stayed in touch over the years. When he heard I was having problems in my marriage, he reached out to offer support." "Support," I repeated. "Yes, as a friend. Someone who knew me before, who could give me perspective on what I was going through." It was a good lie. Reasonable, believable, designed to make me question what I'd seen with my own eyes. Lauren was an HR director. She was skilled at managing difficult conversations and presenting information in ways that served her purposes. "And the kiss?" Lauren's face crumpled. "That was a mistake. I was emotional and grateful for his friendship, and I let things go too far. It didn't mean anything. He said you'd been talking for 3 months. He said you told him you wanted to be with him. He's exaggerating. We've talked a few times, but it wasn't romantic. He misunderstood what I was saying." Another good lie. Make the other man the villain, the one who misread signals and pushed for more than she was offering. Position herself as the victim of his misunderstanding, rather than the architect of a deliberate deception. "What problems?" I asked. "What?" "You said you were having problems in your marriage. What problems?" Lauren hesitated, and I could see her calculating how much truth to mix in with the lies. "We've been distant lately. We don't talk the way we used to. We don't connect the way we used to." "So you decided to connect with your high school boyfriend instead?" "No. I decided to talk to someone who might help me figure out how to fix things with you." It was masterful, really. In the space of 10 minutes, she'd transformed herself from an unfaithful wife into a concerned spouse, seeking outside perspective on how to improve her marriage. The kiss was a momentary lapse in judgment, not evidence of an ongoing affair. Chris was a misguided friend, not a deliberate romantic partner. If I hadn't seen them together with my own eyes, if I hadn't heard Chris's angry confusion about being lied to, I might have believed her. "I love you, Eric," Lauren said, moving closer to me. "I love our marriage. I know I handled this badly, but I want to fix it. We can get counseling. We can work through this." She was good. She was very good. But I'd already decided to follow Paul's advice and let her think she was controlling the situation. "I need time to think," I said. "This is a lot to process." Relief flooded Lauren's face. "Of course. Take all the time you need. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back." I nodded and headed for the guest bedroom. "I'm going to sleep in here tonight. I just need some space." "I understand," Lauren said quickly. "Whatever you need." As I lay in the guest bed that night, staring at the ceiling and listening to Lauren moving around in our bedroom, I thought about the investigation Paul and I were about to begin. I thought about phone records and credit card statements and surveillance photos, but mostly I thought about the look on Lauren's face when she'd asked me to leave my own wife's birthday party. The casual confidence, the expectation that I would comply without argument, the complete lack of concern for my feelings or dignity. That look told me everything I needed to know about what our marriage had become. Now, I just needed to prove it. The next morning, Lauren left for work early with a kiss on my cheek and a promise to work things out. I waited until her car was out of sight before calling in sick to my own job and heading over to Paul's office. Paul ran his private investigation business out of a small suite in a downtown office building. The space was sparse but professional. A desk, filing cabinets, computer equipment, and a coffee maker that looked like it had seen better decades. "You look like hell," Paul said when I walked in. "I feel like hell, but I'm ready to get some answers." Paul had already started pulling information. As the account holder on our family phone plan, I had legal access to call logs and text message records. What I saw made my stomach drop. "Jesus Christ," I muttered, scrolling through 3 months of data on Paul's computer screen. Lauren and Chris had been in contact almost daily since March. Not just occasional calls, but lengthy conversations, sometimes lasting over an hour. Text messages throughout the day, every day. The pattern was clear. They'd start texting early in the morning, continue throughout the workday, and often talk on the phone late at night. "Look at this," Paul said, pointing to a cluster of calls in May. "Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, right around the time you said she started going to the gym more often." I felt sick. She wasn't at the gym. Probably not, at least not alone. Paul pulled up another screen. Credit card records show some interesting patterns too. Lauren had been using our joint credit card to pay for things that didn't make sense. Expensive lunches at restaurants across town from her office, hotel bar charges in the middle of weekday afternoons, a lingerie purchase from a store I'd never heard of, charged 2 weeks ago. "She bought lingerie," I said, staring at the screen. $60 bra and panty set from some boutique place. "When's the last time she wore something like that for you?" I couldn't remember. Our physical relationship had been declining for months, which I'd attributed to work stress and the general challenges of a long marriage. Now I understood where her energy was going. "There's more," Paul said, pulling up social media profiles. "I found Chris Duncan. He's a real estate agent here in town, specializes in high-end properties. Divorced about 2 years ago, one kid who lives with his ex-wife most of the time." Chris Duncan's Facebook profile showed exactly what I'd expected. Expensive car, gym selfies, photos from upscale restaurants and bars. He looked like someone who'd never had trouble getting what he wanted, including other men's wives. "Look at this," Paul said, clicking through to Chris's Instagram account, posted 3 weeks ago. The photo showed Chris at a restaurant I recognized from our credit card statements. In the background, barely visible but definitely there, was a woman with Lauren's distinctive blonde hair and blue dress I'd seen her wear to work. "She's in his social media posts," I said. "Not tagged, not identified, but yeah, she's there." Paul leaned back in his chair. "Eric, this isn't just an affair. This is a relationship. They're not sneaking around for quick hookups, they're dating." The evidence kept mounting. Paul had contacts who could access more detailed phone records, showing not just calls and texts, but location data. Lauren's phone had been pinging from locations all over town that had nothing to do with work or the gym. Hotels, restaurants, Chris's neighborhood. "She's been lying about everything," I said, scrolling through weeks of deception. "Every late night at work, every gym session, every time she said she was running errands, she's been with him." "It gets worse," Paul said quietly. "I ran a background check on Chris Duncan. Guess who his real estate agent certification is through?" "I don't know. The state board?" "Hartwell and Associates, the same marketing firm where your wife works." The room seemed to spin. They work together? Not in the same department, but yeah, same company. They've probably known each other for years, not just from high school. That explained the familiarity I'd witnessed, the comfortable intimacy between them. This wasn't a rekindled high school romance or a chance reconnection through social media. Lauren had been working with Chris, seeing him regularly, building a relationship right under my nose. "How long do you think this has really been going on?" I asked. "Based on what I'm seeing here, probably longer than 3 months. That's just when they started being less careful about it." Paul printed out copies of everything: phone records, credit card statements, location data, social media screenshots. The evidence of Lauren's affair filled a thick folder that represented the systematic destruction of our 7-year marriage. "What's our next move?" I asked. "We watch and document. I want to catch them together in a way that can't be explained away as friendship or coincidence. I want photos, video if possible, evidence that clearly shows this is a romantic and physical relationship. You want me to follow my wife. I want us to establish a pattern of surveillance that shows exactly what she's been doing, but carefully, legally, and without putting you at risk." Paul explained the plan. He would handle the technical surveillance, following them to public places, documenting their meetings, gathering photographic evidence. My job was to continue acting like the devastated husband who was hoping to save his marriage while quietly documenting Lauren's behavior at home. "She's going to make mistakes," Paul said. "She thinks she's in control of the situation now. She thinks you bought her story about Chris being a supportive friend. She's going to get comfortable and sloppy." "What if she doesn't? What if she's smarter than that?" Paul smiled grimly. "Eric, she asked you to leave your own wife's birthday party so she could make out with her boyfriend. She's not that smart." That afternoon, I went home and played the role of the confused, hurt husband. When Lauren called to check on me, I told her I was taking the day to think things through. When she came home from work, I was sitting in our living room with a beer and a carefully constructed expression of wounded uncertainty. "How are you feeling?" she asked, sitting down across from me with her own drink. "Confused," I said honestly. "I keep thinking about last night, trying to understand what happened." Lauren nodded sympathetically. "I know it looked bad, but I want you to know that nothing like that has ever happened before. Chris caught me at a vulnerable moment, and I let my guard down. Tell me about him," I said. "Help me understand who he is to you." So Lauren spun her story. Chris was a high school boyfriend who'd reached out through social media after hearing through mutual friends that I was having marital problems. He'd offered to listen, to provide perspective as someone who cared about her happiness. Their relationship was purely platonic, based on old friendship and his genuine concern for her well-being. It was a beautiful story, touching even. If I hadn't spent the day looking at evidence of their months-long affair, I might have found it convincing. "I think I should meet him," I said. Lauren's face went pale. "What?" "If he's going to be in your life as a friend, I should meet him properly. Maybe the 3 of us could have dinner, talk things through like adults." I don't think that's a good idea," Lauren stammered. "He feels terrible about what happened. He's embarrassed about the misunderstanding." "What misunderstanding?" "About thinking I was available, about thinking our friendship meant more than it did." I nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe you're right. Maybe it's too soon. But eventually, if he's going to be your friend, I'll need to be okay with that." Relief flooded Lauren's face. "Of course, eventually, when the time is right." That evening, Lauren made dinner, and we ate together like a normal married couple working through a rough patch. She was attentive, affectionate, asking about my day and sharing stories from her office. She was playing the role of the loving wife who'd made a mistake and was committed to making things right. It was a masterful performance. If I hadn't known better, I would have believed that our marriage was salvageable, that we just needed time and communication to get back on track. After dinner, Lauren excused herself to take a shower. I waited until I heard the water running, then quietly checked her phone, which she'd left charging on the kitchen counter. 17 text messages from Chris Duncan, sent throughout the day. I couldn't open them without her passcode, but I could see the preview of the most recent one. I can't stop thinking about last night. When can I see you again? Last night. While I was sleeping in the guest bedroom, processing the destruction of my marriage, Lauren and Chris had been texting about seeing each other again. I took photos of the phone screen with my own device, documenting the messages as evidence, then put Lauren's phone back exactly where I'd found it. When Lauren came out of the shower, I was sitting on our bed reading a book. "Feeling any better?" she asked, settling down beside me. "A little," I said. "I think we can work through this." Lauren smiled and kissed my cheek. "I love you, Eric. I know I messed up, but I'm going to make this right." As she fell asleep beside me that night, I stared at the ceiling and thought about the text messages on her phone. I thought about the evidence Paul and I had gathered, the clear pattern of deception and betrayal. But mostly, I thought about how easy it was for Lauren to lie to my face while planning to see her boyfriend again. Tomorrow, Paul and I would start phase 2 of our investigation. Tomorrow, we would begin gathering the kind of evidence that would make it impossible for Lauren to control the narrative about our marriage. Tonight, I just had to lie next to my wife and pretend I still trusted her.